Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. We hear a lot about the electric cars themselves, but the real story of the 2026 EV ecosystem has evolved way beyond just what's on the road. We're looking at a massive interconnected energy network that starts under the hood, goes through the plug, and actually ends up right inside our homes.
But let's start at the ground level, because the friction points of EV ownership are still very real for everyday drivers. Take this Reddit user, stranded in Chicago in a Ford Focus with just 7% battery left. They're panicking, they don't want to risk getting completely stuck, and they're staring down a ridiculous $165 quote for a mobile charge. Ouch. I mean, it's a highly relatable moment of panic, right? We've all watched our phone battery turn red and die, let alone our actual car.
And this brings us to a really fundamental question. When we talk about range anxiety or dead batteries, are we actually looking at a hardware problem or a network problem? Like, is it that the cars themselves simply don't hold enough juice? Or is it that the infrastructure built around them just isn't reliable enough to give us peace of mind?
To answer that, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The real-world EV experience. 2. The great battery chemistry divide. 3. Upgrading the charging network. 4. Cars as power plants. And finally, 5. The second life battery economy.
All right, diving into Section 1, the real-world EV experience. So, when our stranded Reddit user asked the community for help, nobody actually recommended paying that $165 mobile charge fee. Instead, they offered some very practical, grounded solutions. Stuff like turn off the climate control, yes, including those heated seats, just to stretch that 7% into a 20-mile buffer. Others pointed out that simply plugging into a standard 110-volt wall outlet could warm the battery enough to get it moving, or honestly, just paying for a standard tow to a level 2 public charger. It really shows that managing an EV requires a fundamental mindset shift. Elevating EV ownership is about changing our daily habits, not just swapping out the hardware we drive.
But, despite those micro-anxieties, mass adoption is undeniably here. Just think about this. 154 million zero-emission vehicle trips were completed globally on Uber in just the first quarter of 2026 alone. To put that into perspective, that is almost 20 EV trips happening every single second. So while an individual driver might still occasionally sweat a 7% battery, the wider ecosystem is processing millions of these trips flawlessly.
Now let's shift gears to Section 2, the great battery chemistry divide. Okay, so choosing an EV right now is literally a choose-your-fighter scenario, depending on your daily life. You've basically got LFP versus NMC. LFP, which is lithium iron phosphate, gives you incredible cycle life. We're talking 3,000 to 6,000 cycles. And it's super safe with a thermal runaway threshold of 270 degrees Celsius. On the flip side, NMC, or nickel-manganese cobalt, gives you much higher energy density, up to 300 watt-hours per kilogram, and that translates directly to better range, especially if you live somewhere with extreme cold weather.
What's genuinely fascinating here is that neither chemistry has truly won the war. They just serve totally different driver needs, splitting the global market basically right down the middle with LFP at 50% and NMC at 45%. Think about it. If you're a daily commuter who wants a battery that'll last a decade with daily 100% charges, LFP is your best friend. But if you're driving 200+ miles a day or parking outside in sub-zero winters, you are definitely going to want to rely on NMC.
And this chemical divide has massive financial implications. LFP doesn't use expensive cobalt, which completely lowers manufacturing costs and makes EVs so much more accessible. At roughly $80 to $100 per kilowatt hour, an LFP battery pack costs thousands of dollars less to build than an equivalent NMC pack. That savings is exactly what's pulling sticker prices down into the realm of the everyday car buyer.
But hey, great batteries are completely useless without reliable plugs, right? So, Section 3, upgrading the charging network.
According to Dreves' 2026 industry report, operators are actually shifting away from just blindly building more chargers, and they're focusing heavily on reliability and plug-and-charge simplicity. 47% of network operators are citing 24/7 network availability as their top priority, closely followed by seamless authentication at 43%. Because honestly, the industry has realized that putting thousands of charges in the ground literally doesn't matter if you pull up and the screen is dead or the app just refuses to authorize your payment.
And while a solid 67% of operators know that AI is critical for scaling these networks, they're facing some really grounded barriers getting these smart systems to actually talk to each other. AI could theoretically optimize power flow and predict maintenance before a charger even breaks down, but operators are struggling to integrate these advanced models into older legacy systems. And with the high upfront costs, the immediate return on investment is just kind of hard to justify right now.
Moving on to Section 4, cars as power plants, or vehicle-to-grid integration.
Once we connect smart batteries to a smart network, we unlock this incredible life cycle, where your car isn't just taking energy, it's actively giving it back to your home and the grid when demand spikes. Your EV battery is essentially a giant mobile power bank. Through vehicle-to-grid, or V2G technology, operators can pool thousands of plugged-in cars together to create what's known as a virtual power plant. This supplies short-duration balancing power right back to the grid exactly when everyone needs it most. And guys, this isn't science fiction anymore. Policies are actively turning individual vehicles into unified energy networks capable of trading power in real time. Take Maryland, for example. In 2025, they adopted rules meaning a fleet of electric school buses, or even a whole neighborhood of plugged-in pickup trucks, can legally be treated as one unified power generator. It shifts the burden completely off aging power plants and turns parked cars into actual financial assets.
Finally, let's zoom all the way out for Section 5, the second life battery economy. So what happens when a battery can no longer power a car? Well, it still holds massive potential. Even after 8 to 10 years on the road, when it degrades to 70 or 80%, it might not give you the highway range you want for a road trip, but it has plenty of juice to run your home appliances or back up a commercial building for another 1 to 15 years.
Because these batteries spend most of their time just sitting on standby, they are absolutely dominating the commercial and residential power backup market. Over 55% of second life batteries are going directly into power backup. An LFP battery in particular, with that ultra-safe thermal threshold we talked about earlier, is the absolute perfect candidate to just chill in your garage and keep your lights on during a blackout.
And this repurposing creates a staggering macroeconomic forecast. The global second life EV battery market is projected to reach over $224 billion by 2040. That's billion with a B. We are essentially watching the birth of an entirely new asset class. Instead of mining brand new materials for grid storage, tech giants and startups are simply intercepting these perfectly good batteries before they ever hit the recycling bin.
So as we transform cars into mobile power plants and second life home batteries, ask yourself, how are you going to interact with this living energy network? Will your next car power your house, or maybe even pay you back for balancing the grid while you sleep? It's a completely new way to think about driving. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.